Okay, so you know how everyone dreams of having their own little backyard paradise, where it's always warm and sunny no matter what the weather's doing outside?
A little slice of perpetual spring, I get it.
Exactly. And when you guys send over this guide from Oklahoma State University all about hobby greenhouses, I gotta say, it really got my wheels turning. Suddenly, I'm looking at my patio in a whole new light.
It's easy to get caught up in the fantasy, isn't it? But this guide does a great job of reminding us that a successful greenhouse, well, it takes more than just wishing for it.
Yeah, they definitely don't sugarcoat it. Reading through it, I was like, okay, this is serious business. We're talking commitment here, right? Like it's an investment on multiple levels.
Absolutely. There's the financial aspect for sure, but it's also an investment of your time and energy. It's like leveling up your gardening game to like expert mode.
Totally. This guide made me realize I get way too excited about just keeping my houseplants alive.
Right. It's a whole other ball game. And that's why I appreciate how this guide really emphasizes the importance of defining your goals from the outset.
So before you even start sketching out blueprints, you got to ask yourself, what are you actually trying to achieve here?
Precisely. Are we talking like a couple of tomato plants to extend the season? Or do you envision a full-blown year-round herb garden? Maybe even an orchid sanctuary?
Okay, now we're talking. But yeah, that initial vision is going to drastically impact the scale and complexity of your greenhouse.
Without a doubt.
Oh, and speaking of scale,
Yeah.
this guy threw out a fact that I thought was hilarious, but also so true, is like the first rule of greenhouses, no matter what size you build.
It's never big enough.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like that saying about closets. You can never have too much storage space. But anyway, before we get too carried away with dreams of overflowing planters,
Mm-hmm.
we got to talk location.
Ah, yes. Location, location, location. It's not just about finding a sunny spot in your backyard.
Right. Because I was initially thinking, well, anywhere the HOA allows, right? But apparently it's not that simple.
Not quite. This guide really emphasizes the importance of sunlight, especially during the winter months.
So even down here in Oklahoma, we got to be thinking about south-facing walls like we're up north trying to catch every ray.
Exactly. It's all about maximizing that winter sun.
Wow, this is already blowing my mind. But okay, I'm intrigued. So we're channeling our inner Vermont ski lodge with our Oklahoma greenhouse.
I love it.
I-
Oh, you know what else I thought was really clever? How they suggest using existing structures for shade during the summer.
Oh, absolutely. Talk about resourceful.
Right. Like imagine tucking your greenhouse into the L shape of your house. You've got built-in shade.
A brilliant passive solar strategy. But as much as I love geeking out on the location and orientation, I know you're itching to talk about the really fun stuff.
Oh, you know me too well. The design. But I have to admit, I'm already feeling a little overwhelmed by all the choices. Lean-to versus freestanding, fiberglass, plastic. Where do we even begin?
Don't worry, this guide breaks it down in a way that's surprisingly approachable. Let's start with that first big decision point. Lean-to greenhouse or freestanding. Okay, so for those of us who are new to the world of greenhouses, and I'm raising my hand here, what exactly is a lean-to greenhouse?
So picture this. It's basically what it sounds like. A structure that leans against an existing wall. Typically, you'd want that wall to be south-facing to maximize sunlight.
Okay, so like a little extension of your home, using that existing wall to your advantage.
Precisely. And that can be a great option, especially if you're working with a smaller space or if you're just starting out.
Yeah, I imagine it would be super convenient for things like electricity and water access too, right? No need to run all new lines.
Exactly. But, like with anything, there are some trade-offs to consider.
Okay, so what are the downsides of a lean-to greenhouse? Because I'm guessing there are some, or everyone would be building them, right?
Precisely. One of the main drawbacks, as this guide points out, is that because you're limited by that existing wall, you might not get as much light as you would with a freestanding structure.
Right. Less wall space equals less potential for windows, less sunlight. Makes sense. What else should we be thinking about when deciding between a lean-to and a freestanding greenhouse?
Ventilation and temperature control, these are crucial factors to consider. And with a freestanding greenhouse, you have a lot more flexibility in terms of airflow and placement. You can really optimize the environment for your specific climate and the types of plants you want to grow.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So freestanding greenhouses give you more control, more flexibility. But I'm guessing that freedom comes with like a price tag attached,
Right.
right?
You know it. Building freestanding means you're starting from scratch. Foundation, framing, the whole 9 yards. It's definitely a bigger undertaking. More time, more money, more everything.
And I imagine heating a freestanding greenhouse in the winter probably takes more energy too, right?
You're absolutely right. That increased surface area means you'll need a more robust heating system to keep things cozy for your plants when it's cold outside.
So maybe not the best option for a beginner, but I can definitely see the appeal, especially if you have the space and the budget. Really go all out. Okay, so we've tackled the lean-to versus freestanding debate. What's next on our greenhouse construction checklist?
Well, once you've nailed down the basic structure, then comes the fun part, choosing your materials.
Ooh, yes. This guide had a whole section comparing fiberglass and plastic greenhouses.
I have to admit, I always thought of fiberglass as more of an industrial material. Is it really necessary for a backyard greenhouse?
That's a great question. And the guide does a nice job of highlighting both the pros and cons of fiberglass. On the plus side, it's incredibly strong and durable, yet still lightweight.
Okay, so we're talking like hail-proof. Because let's be real, that's a genuine concern here in Oklahoma.
Exactly. A fiberglass greenhouse can definitely stand up to the elements. However, there's a catch.
Hit me with it. What's the downside?
Quality. Fiberglass quality can vary wildly, and unfortunately, lower-grade fiberglass tends to discolor over time.
And that's bad because, well, that discoloration, it actually reduces the amount of light that reaches your plants. And here's the kicker. Good quality fiberglass, it can actually end up being just as expensive as glass, which kind of defeats the purpose of going with fiberglass in the first place, right?
Ugh, the classic dilemma. Okay, so what about plastic greenhouses? Are those like the flimsy, held together with duct tape kind of structures I'm picturing in my head?
Not at all. Plastic greenhouse technology has come a long way. In fact, the guide mentions that they're becoming increasingly popular, and for good reason. For one, they're much more affordable than glass or high-end fiberglass.
Okay, so point for plastic affordability. What else?
They can be just as effective at trapping heat.
So you're telling me I can have my cake and eat it too? Functionality and affordability in one package. I'm starting to see the appeal of plastic, but I do have one lingering concern. Durability. Like, how long will a plastic greenhouse actually last?
It's true, plastic doesn't exactly scream built to last in the same way that, say, brick does.
Right.
The guide does acknowledge that plastic coverings will need to be replaced more frequently than glass or fiberglass. But hey, think of it as an opportunity.
An opportunity to do what? Replace your greenhouse every few years.
Exactly. It's a chance to refresh your greenhouse's look. Maybe even try out a different design.
Okay, I like the way you think. So we've got our structure sorted out. We've chosen our materials. It's really starting to feel like a real greenhouse now. But what about the stuff that goes inside? This guide had a whole section on creating, like, a potting shed or workspace within the greenhouse.
Right. I love that part. It's like having a mini gardening command center right there attached to your greenhouse.
Yes, they talked about attaching a separate workspace onto the greenhouse itself. That way you've got a designated area for potting, starting seeds, maybe even like a little plant hospital.
A plant hospital. I love that.
Yeah.
For those plants that need a little extra TLC.
Exactly, I can already picture it. Shelves stocked with pots and tools. Grow lights casting a warm glow. A comfy chair for browsing seed catalogs. It's a gardener's dream come true.
And think about how convenient it would be to move plants between the greenhouse and the workspace, no matter what the weather's doing outside. No more hauling trays of seedlings through the snow or rain.
Oh my gosh, you're speaking my language. Okay, you've officially sold me on the attached workspace. I'm already brainstorming cute little signs to hang up. Keep calm and garden on. Sorry for what I said when I was repotting.
I can already see it. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the more technical aspects of greenhouse design, because as much as I love a good potting shed, the heart of this guide is really about creating that ideal growing environment inside the greenhouse.
Right, because a greenhouse full of wilted, sad-looking plants isn't exactly the dream scenario we're going for here.
Exactly. So we need to talk about heating and ventilation.
Okay, so how do we prevent our greenhouses from turning into, like, saunas? What does the guide recommend?
Well, they offer a range of solutions depending on your budget and how much you love a good DIY project.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What's the most low-tech approach to ventilation?
You really can't go wrong with good old-fashioned window openings and fans, just creating a nice cross breeze to keep the air moving.
Okay, so that seems manageable enough. But what about for those super hot days, when even a fan isn't cutting it?
That's where things get a little more interesting. The guy had some pretty clever solutions for those scorching summer days. First up, Those DIY whitewash recipes we talked about earlier?
Oh, right. To create shade for the greenhouse. It's such a simple but effective idea.
Exactly. A little ingenuity can go a long way. And then for a more high-tech approach, they recommend evaporative coolers.
Evaporative coolers. Okay, I'll admit, I'm not familiar with those. What are they and why are they so great for greenhouses?
Well, picture this. It's a system that cools the air naturally using just water and a breeze. Essentially, it draws air through a water-soaked pad, and as the water evaporates, it cools the air. Super efficient, especially in a dry climate like ours.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're basically recreating the cooling effect of a natural breeze, but inside your greenhouse.
Precisely.
I love it. See, this is why I love these deep dives, always learning something new. But as much as I enjoy geeking out on the technical side of things, let's not forget why we're building these greenhouses in the first place. The plants.
Right. And speaking of plants, this guide really emphasized the importance of maintaining a healthy, growing environment.
Yeah, they had a whole section on preventing pests and diseases.
Cleanliness is key, my friend. Think of it like washing your hands before you cook. A little preventative care goes a long way in the greenhouse.
Makes sense. And a clean greenhouse is a happy greenhouse, right? Plus, with that handy-dandy potting shed we've added, we'll have plenty of space to store our cleaning supplies.
Exactly, you're thinking like a pro. But this whole deep dive has got me thinking. Building a greenhouse is about so much more than just, following instructions.
Oh, absolutely. It's about creating something that brings you joy.
Exactly. It's about infusing your own personality and passion into the process.
Totally. It's about creating a space that reflects your own unique gardening style. Okay, so we've covered ventilation, keeping things cool in the summer. But what about the flip side? Heating our greenhouses in the winter. Because let's be real, it gets chilly here in Oklahoma. I'm not sure my usual strategy of wearing an extra sweater is going to cut it for a whole greenhouse full of plants.
Probably not. But luckily, the guide goes into great detail about different heating options, from simple to more elaborate. They even cover how to figure out how much heating capacity you'll need based on the size of your greenhouse and, how cold it gets outside.
See, this is why I love having experts like you around to explain this stuff to me. Because honestly, my brain kind of checked out when they started talking about BTUs and formulas.
Well, they do get pretty technical, but the good news is they offer a range of solutions, so you can choose what works best for your skill set and budget.
Okay, so for those of us who, let's say, aren't afraid of a little DIY, what kind of heating options are we talking about?
Well, for a smaller greenhouse, you could probably get away with something like space heaters. But for larger structures, you might need a hot water or even a steam system.
Okay, so it scales with the size of the greenhouse. Makes sense. But what about for us DIY enthusiasts? Anything in there for us?
Absolutely. They had a whole section on electric heating options like radiant heat lamps and, get this, soil heating cables.
Soil heating cables. Okay, now that sounds kind of fancy, like giving your plants little electric blankets for their roots.
Exactly. It's like underfloor heating, but for plants. And the guide even provides the formulas to calculate the heat output you'll need.
Okay, you lost me at formulas. But I appreciate that they included that level of detail for those who like to really geek out on the technical stuff. I'm more of a, if it grows kind of gardener.
That's the beauty of this guide, though. It caters to all levels of expertise.
So true. But, okay, I think we've covered pretty much everything when it comes to building and maintaining the perfect greenhouse environment, right?
I think so. Unless you have any other burning questions.
Not at the moment. This deep dive has been incredibly informative.
It's been a pleasure chatting about all things greenhouses with you. I always love digging into these practical guides and seeing how we can apply this knowledge to our own lives.
Me too. And you know what really struck me while reading this guide? It's about so much more than just like the nuts and bolts of construction. It's about creating a space that brings you joy, right?
Absolutely. It's about that connection we forge with nature, even if it's just a few steps outside our back door.
Exactly. And I think that's something we could all use a little more of in our lives. So for those of you who are feeling inspired to create your own little backyard oasis.
Don't let the technical stuff intimidate you.
Exactly. Remember, it's all about taking that first step, doing your research, and most importantly, having fun with it.
Couldn't agree more. Happy gardening, everyone.